Hey, everybody, and welcome to the True Crime Squad. This is Katie Weaver. I'm here with my sister, co host, and partner in crime, Kristi Brower. Hello.
Hello, hey guys, I'm back. And I
Look who's
brought
back.
my pearls.
Oh,
I've
you
had to
are going to
restring them
need
like
'em.
14 times during this trial. Tell you what, my cats are having a heyday with them.
The clutching is, well, there was another day of it.
Yes.
But you went camping.
I was, yeah. I've been camping all weekend. We took our new motorhome out. We bought it at the end of December. And, if you're a camping person and you have an RV of any kind, you know that there's always going to be, 2, 3 catastrophes of every camping trip. And we certainly had those. We discovered on Friday that our motorhome has dual tires on the back and that one of the inside tires was blown. We don't know for how long because we'd only ever driven it to and from and back again the RV place where we bought it. So we had to go replace that.
Oh, wow.
Then we put water in it and water just ran all over the ground and we couldn't find the valve that you have to turn off to, keep the water in. Had to drive it back to the RV place and say, hey, we don't know how to use this thing. So they taught us. It's also having some kind of a battery or alternator problem. And so the only way I can start it is if I use the RV batteries to start it because the other battery won't jump. So did that. And then we got up there and we had a great time. It actually rained like crazy for the first 2 days, but it was just really fun. We walked our dogs. We had a little fire here and there. We hung out in the mini and just, we watched some movies and listened to music and just had a great time. And then yesterday, the whole fam came up to visit. We celebrated a birthday. We had a great time.
We did. It was beautiful then. I mean,
Yeah, it was
sprinkled a little
gorgeous.
bit, but it wasn't bad. Yeah.
It was the best day by far. And then today we got all packed up and ready to go and went to put our slide in, and that bitch wouldn't come in.
Oh, no.
And you can't, if you have a slide out, it's like sliding, one of the rooms out of several feet to give you more space. And yeah, you can't drive it if that's slid out.
Yeah, for sure.
But we got to read in the instruction manual and figured out how to fix that and slid her in and brought her home. So
look at you guys. You're getting your little mini all figured out.
We are, and that is pretty much just how it goes with camping. And now we know lots of things about it we didn't know before. But gosh, we had a really good time. It was super fun.
Well, good. Well, I came out to visit you guys on Friday night, and it was a little rainy and it was a little dark. And I was chatting with one of my daughters on the phone, and I pulled all the way into that place we normally like to camp, and I could not see you guys. I drove all the way through, and then I was like, oh, maybe you're in the other spot we like that's near there. And my daughter's like, you should not drive down in there in the car. That is a bad idea. And I'm like, oh, no, I'll be fine. She's like, Mom, it's really ruddy. You should not take your car in there. I'm like, no, I've done it before. It'll be fine. Well, I drove down in there and apparently took a jump and muffed up my car. I knew when I was pulling out of there, there was a noise. And I was like, oh, did I do that? Surely I didn't. Did I do that? So I found you guys.
Am I going to have to tell my mechanic husband I just did that? Yeah.
So I called him on the way home and I'm like, this car's making a little bit of a sound, but maybe it's just we have a bad shock that we actually have the shock. He just hasn't replaced it yet. And I was like, maybe it's just a shock, right? And he's like, I don't know. What does it sound like? And I'm like, it's just making noise. I don't know. So I got home, but I told him I think I might have like banged up the car a little bit. So the next morning we get up and we had to go out run some errands and the car's making a really bad sound. So he put it up on a jack and I guess there's a kind of a membrane under the car, a cover thing that I tore part way off. So it was just rubbing all
I've done
over
that before.
it. And yeah, so he had to get some big cutter things and cut it off. And okay, my name was Mud. It was Mud.
That's funny.
Guess moral of this story. But he didn't know that Mars had told me not to drive down in there until later, and then it was even worse. So anyway,
Right?
apparently don't
Yeah,
do that.
I guess.
What you guys don't know is I never drive ever. Like I
Mm-mm.
might drive once every couple of months. I hardly ever get behind the wheel. I just don't need to. We usually go everywhere together. I don't drive in the winter very much because I don't want to. But I wanted to go out to camp. Scott was real happy playing Fortnite with the kids, so I just went and and packed up the car. So it's fine.
Well, that's what he gets for not going, I guess.
You get what you get. That's right. But all's well that ends well. So
It
car's
is.
fine. All is fine.
Mhm.
Probably get to drive again sometime. So there you are. Well, it was an interesting day in court. I
Was.
had a brand new soundbite. I just wondered before we
I'm
start.
so proud of you that you did this without me. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, I did the sound bites Friday too.
Yeah, it's excellent.
So let's just listen to it now. We're not to it yet in the conversation, but it's too damn funny to not listen to.
Of that October 9th time. Can you tell me what Alex Cox's phone and where it was binging on October 9th between approximately 5:30 and 10:30 at night?
Did you say binging? I'm sorry.
Well, where it was locating, where it was showing location data.
Just say binging.
Somebody finally called him out because most people just pretend, Mr. Lapidity. He only said it about 400 times. I'm so glad that Agent Balance actually was like, what?
Just say binging.
Ugh.
Loved it. Hmm.
Yeah, that was
Absolutely
hilarious.
loved it. So we started, of course, with Agent Balance, and Agent Balance works for the FBI. He has moved from the position he was in when he was on this case to an international position with the FBI, and we were not allowed to see his face, which was
Yes, no,
really
you were not.
interesting. But they had
Yeah,
to rearrange the
protecting
cameras
him.
in a way that we could see the judge, but we could not see the witness box. Uh, so that was kind of interesting. Yeah, he meant pinging. Pinging had only been said, as you can imagine, Jess, about 1,000 times. But to Pryor, of course, it was binging. So that kind of gave us a
Yeah,
taste of what the cross was going to be like, talking about super tech stuff. Because I don't know if you guys know this. However,
I'm an idiot when it comes to electronics. I'm an idiot when it comes to electronics. I'm an idiot when it comes to electronics.
hmm
so we knew it was going to be rough. But let's talk about the direct first. So his job, Balance has a really impressive resume. So he's been a special agent since 2016. He works in DC. He worked as a U.S. Deputy Marshal for 9 years before he joined the FBI. He's currently a member of the Cellular Analyst Survey Team, also known as CAST. CAST is a group of 70 to 80 special agents that have been very specially trained and tested to work on this task force. And they specialize in using cell phone records to determine the general location of a phone where it might be in interest of an investigation. It is high level, high tech stuff.
Oh man, it is like super nerd, so smart. Wow.
Hmm.
And the way he could just rattle it all off was also so impressive,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
really good.
And a lot of you guys felt like he sounded like he's probably super hot. So you're probably right. You're probably right. And he did
Probably
do
is. I
an
mean, pretty
excellent
much
job,
most of the, John Pryor excluded, most of the men in this case are very good looking.
right? They don't have the fuglies. They don't. Okay. So he's trying to explain the cell phone towers and also kind of dumb it down for people, John Pryor, and help
Mhm.
us understand like what all the pinging means. So I thought this was a good reference. He was talking about how like more rural areas like ours have fewer towers, but in more populated cities like Boise, they have a lot more. He compared it to sprinklers on grass. If some spots don't get water, they will die, whereas some sprinkler water overlaps to make sure all the grass gets watered. So in a
Yeah.
place like Boise, you might have several different towers that are pinging at the same time on, your location so that you are able to have coverage. But where we live, that is more sparse. But they did say that there's 3 different towers pinging at the Daybell home,
Hmm.
or binging, if you will.
But how many are binging? Or is it bing, 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 bong, bong?
Yeah, that's what I thought. This is bing bong for sure.
Hmm.
So he was asked after the kids were found. So a couple of weeks after the kids were found, he commissioned a piece of equipment called a GAR, Gladiator Autonomous Receiver. The GAR is a piece of equipment that fits in a car. It has sensors, antennas, scanners, a computer, and some software to get raw measurements that map out the cell phone towers.
Yeah.
So his job was to take the GAR and drive around the whole area, like from Daybell's all the way into Rexburg, all the way into St. Anthony, to track what cell phone towers are doing what, essentially.
Hmm.
And then they're also cross referencing with Google location services. Now, of course, you can opt in to have your location recorded on your phone or opt out. We all end up opting in because a lot of apps won't even run without your location data on.
Hmm.
And, a lot of people just don't turn their location off, I think most of us don't even think about it. Every time I hear all this stuff in court, I get a little tiny bit uncomfy. I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not a criminal or anything, but man,
I don't think you've killed anyone, so I think you're all right.
yeah,
I
I'm
use
gonna,
Google location so that my son and I can locate each other.
yeah, yeah, I do it with my kids. Mostly they do it with me, to be honest. But um, Scott made this drink, and I don't really know what he put in it, so I don't. I'm gonna try and do a good job. He said it would be great. It's great. It is great, but
Rhonda offered to pour me a glass of wine, and I said, I am so tired that if that happened, I don't know if I would stay awake all the way through our show. So I better pass.
he had a bunch of minis that we bought at Total Wine last time we were there of stuff, and he was just opening bottles and putting things in, and
Oh,
I,
who knows?
yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens. All righty. So at any rate, he said you can't pinpoint the exact location of a phone with Google, but you can find the general location. Hell, I think you can with Snapchat, to be completely honest. I think Snapchat
Yeah,
mapping is way better than Google's.
it
But
is. We have used it several times, actually, very successfully.
mhm, yeah. So at any rate, but they're cross-referencing different ways to track people's locations, in other words. So he looked at numerous call detail records from multiple phones because, as we know, these fools had like 9 burner phones.
Hmm.
Now, this is where Voluminous entered the chat because Wood asked him, would you say that the records were voluminous? And indeed, he said, yes, they were voluminous.
It's always two. It's always at least two.
Rob, I think you're doing it on purpose. I really do.
I love it. I love it.
So they submit this enormous report. This is where Pryor asks for a sidebar. Pryor was really quiet this morning. I think he'd only objected
Weirdly.
at one time up to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they show the exhibit. So some locations of interest were one of the first things they talked about. The burn pit in Chad's yard, Tylee and
Hmm.
JJ's body locations, Chad's residence, Lori's residence, Alex's residence, the Salem LDS Church, the Holiday Inn Express in Springville, Utah, Evergreen
Hmm.
Cemetery in Springville, Wireless Revolution in Rexburg, Walmart in Rexburg, BYU Idaho Library in Rexburg. Chad used to go there to write or something. Sportsman's Warehouse in Idaho Falls, and Marriott Residence Inn in Kansas. Some of the places these guys have been. Uh, so the next slide showed the Google location between midnight and 5 a.m. on September 9th. And on September 9th, of course, Tylee was last photographed alive the day before at Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Alex's device was at Lori's apartment from 2:42 a.m. and then at 4:37 a.m. he showed back up at his apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That has always really said it all, you know?
It's terrifying to me what must have gone on that night.
And what was
Tyler was
Tylee
16
doing? Was
years
she
old.
asleep in her bed?
Yeah.
Was she
Did she
watching
fight
TV?
them?
Yeah. Well, we'll never know. The next slide shows activity on Chad's phone from 7:20 a.m. to 8:04 a.m. on the 9th. Multiple text messages with Lori and then a call at 8:03 a.m.
Hmm.
Then Wood asked how often they communicate, and he said pretty regularly. Then at 9:40 a.m., a call was made from Chad to Alex. The call was, or no, I'm sorry, at 8:11 a.m. Excuse me. At 8:11, there was a call from Alex. The call was 180 seconds long. Then at 8:58, a text was sent from Chad to Lori. And then there were also texts at 8:15 and 8:39. So there was a pretty good flurry of communication between the three of them early in the morning.
Yeah.
Then, of course, at 9:21, we see Chad's device show up on, or Alex's device show up on Chad's property.
Yeah.
Um, Also, it pings again at 10:57 there. They picked up on multiple spots on the property, including spots where Tylee was found. And of course, he went to the Daybell property and he noted that there is gate access that would allow somebody to drive right out into that pasture or that field.
Hmm.
Then there was a break. Then we come back, and the next slide shows Chad's phone was used between 10:30 and 12:20 that day. Multiple text messages and one call with Lori. This was during the same time that Alex was on the property.
Yeah.
So not only do we know Chad was home, we know he was home talking to Lori and communicating with Lori back and forth. Alex's device was on Chad's property again at or pings again at 11:42. Then he's traveling southbound away from the property from 11:46 to 11:47. At 11:45, Chad calls Lori, and then an outgoing call was made from Alex to Lori right around this time as well. So it looks like Chad called Lori as Alex was leaving, and Alex also called Lori as Alex was leaving.
Hmm.
The next slide shows us Chad received a text from Lori between 12:32 and 12:34. At 12:39, a text message was received on Chad's device from Lori's device. So there's still kind of a flurry of communication going on. The next few slides show cell
Hmm.
phone towers that were utilized to track this information. A lot of this is just proving how they know what they know.
Yeah.
So then we move on to the last day that JJ was seen alive. The slide shows multiple outbound text messages and one inbound text message between Chad and Lori made from 3:59 a.m. to 8:35 a.m.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
definitely texting good stuff.
Hmm.
The crack of dawn like that. No, you're not.
Well, and who texted who at 3:59 a.m.? Chad texted Lori.
Uh-huh.
So Chad was up and home, but up and knew what the hell was going on and asking questions in the very middle of the night.
Hmm.
To
Really
me,
does nothing with their theory that Chad just didn't even know.
uh-huh. Pretty hard to believe that with updates like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let me get back to my notes here. Okay. All right. So then at 8:25 a.m., Chad's device calls Alex's device. The call's 38 seconds long. What do you think Chad was calling to say to Alex?
Right?
I have finally learned how to use a shovel and the hole is ready.
Oh God.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm guessing he was calling him to let him know when he was ready. So,
Yeah.
Brennan, the reason we can't see the context of those texts is that Verizon does not save them.
Yeah. They are not
And
saved.
they don't. So a lot of the texts don't exist. The texts that we do know exist, we've seen a lot of, but unfortunately,
Mhm.
all of the ones from the Verizon phones or Verizon burners, we don't have. But I'm with you. I really wish we could too. I think. I don't know.
Mhm. I don't know. I mean, for the case's sake, yes.
Yeah. But my God, I can only imagine what they say. Okay. So then they go through all of these things, or sorry, I'm going to back up. All right. So then at 9:27 a.m. to 9:57 a.m., three cell phone towers near the Daybell home pick up on devices. So a tower near Lori's house was utilized picking up on her device, so she was at home.
Mhm.
It looks like, and Alex, of course, traveled north from his home out to Chad's house. His device was found in and around Chad's property from 9:55 a.m. to 10:12 a.m. That's what makes me think that Chad reached out to say, "Hey, I'm ready," because he
Mhm.
wasn't there long enough. He was there long
No.
enough to just bury JJ and leave.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
next slide shows activity on Chad's phone the morning of September 23rd, same day, between 9:30 a.m. and 10:27 a.m. Multiple calls and texts between Chad and Lori. Then from 10:13 to 10:17, Chad is texting Lori. He also calls Alex. Then Wood asked Balance if there's other times that Alex's device had showed up around Chad's property. So, yes, August 17th, August 24th, September 6th, September 25th, and October 15th.
Mhm.
Uh, so they kind of go through the slides again, focusing a little bit more on the timeline. People in the courtroom were saying that a lot of jurors were really taking notes, were really trying to keep up and make sense of what they were seeing.
Because
And
it's a
then,
lot, and it's a lot of technical stuff.
yeah, it is. And they'll go through this with a few different experts to
They
make sure
will.
that it really hits home exactly what we're seeing. So then we move to cross. So a pretty red faced prior gets up to start crossing. He looks flustered to me from the get go. And I'm sure he was because all this tech stuff is tough to understand.
Yeah.
And I think for him, it's probably even more tough to understand than for a lot of other people. But
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think it's why he hardly objected. He objected occasionally, like for leading, or pretty much leading was the objection of the day, but there wasn't
Yeah.
much. He just didn't have much to say. So he goes on cross. He asks him the significance of October 9th in his report. He says that that's the day that Tammy Daybell reported an assault. So he immediately says, with a paintball gun. Yes,
Oh
Prior.
my
Okay.
God.
Gotcha. Paintball gun has entered the
Th-
chat yet again.
this guy doesn't care. It's
hmm
not his job to care if it was a paintball gun or not, and
hmm
no one else cares either.
So
Ugh.
right. So he shows a slide that shows Alex's device between 5:16 and 11:53 p.m. Wood asks for a sidebar, and they have a sidebar. Then they come back. They go back to questioning. They stopped talking about that entirely, so I don't know what the sidebar determined, but they quit talking about that. Then Pryor wants to know the difference between a tower and a cell site. We've already been over this, but okay. So he explains it all again. He asks him when he did the drive test. He tells him, that it was over the week of June 16th, but it's over multiple days. He
Mhm.
asks about gladiator forensics, and this is where I think John really started to fall apart because
Yes,
he
so
was
much.
he was really trying to get a gotcha moment here.
So hard, yeah.
And he seemed to this is my going theory. And if I am proved wrong at the end of this case, I will freely admit it. But here's what I think was happening. I think that Pryor has uh, witness. We know he has a witness. I can't think of his name right now, but he has a expert witness that's going to come and talk about this data and try to
Yeah.
debunk it, right?
Right.
Well, I think this expert witness has given Pryor a bunch of talking points or ideas or explained things to him in any certain way that Pryor
Yeah.
thinks he knows some things and went in for some jugular kills today on some of this information and was found to be wrong over and over and over. Everything he
Yeah.
said, Balance is like, nope, that's not true. So here's what he's mad about, or what he started in with. So the Gladiator Forensics Company and this piece of equipment that he was using, Gladiator Forensics only sells that to law enforcement. So a layperson cannot buy that piece of equipment. So Pryor was going into it with well, if only the government can own that equipment, then how can we even know if it's accurate? And how can we even know? And that can't be fair. And he kind of started a little line of, how could we know that people aren't just being set up by the government kind of a line?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, there's a lot of other companies out there that sell similar things. It's just Gladiator doesn't sell to other people. But you
Yeah.
can't buy this kind of technology. He's like, no, you can. Well, but then you can't. But only the government can. He's like, no, not at all. That's completely incorrect. He's like,
No
people can,
citizen could go double check this.
uh-huh. And he's like, no, yeah, they
Yeah, they
can.
could.
He's like, this equipment exists out there. This specific brand you can't purchase from anybody, you know, from them unless you are law enforcement. But he goes, there's a lot of this equipment out there. He's like, it's just you're just not correct. And Pryor's
Mhm.
getting redder and redder and more flustered. And I'm
Yeah.
realizing what he thinks he understands from his expert witness is he's either incorrect or his expert is incorrect.
Yes.
And he's getting worried and he's getting mad because everything he's saying is wrong.
Yep.
And he keeps getting called out.
Yeah. Well, and Balance even said the raw data report is available. Anybody could take it and, you know, go confirm, its accuracy.
Hmm.
And he didn't
Yep.
like that. Like he's like, "Well, but how would we know that that was accurate?" He was trying anything to discredit this or make it look bad, and it just did not work.
No, first of all, Balance was amazing. He didn't get
Oh,
mad, but he pushed back. He didn't allow any bullshit at all,
yeah.
which was great. Uh, so once they kind of got through that, he asked him to focus on where the irrigation pond and the fire pit is on the property. Then he shows a slide from that account from midnight and 5 a.m. on September 19th, at which point Alex was inside or very close to Lori's apartment. He asks why Balance didn't put any cell phone data and track the data of Melanie Gibb or David Warwick. And Balance says that he wasn't asked to. And again, he was trying for this big gotcha moment. And he's like, I don't know, I wasn't asked to. But you
Right.
didn't? Well, did anyone? He's like, well, I don't know. I wasn't asked to.
This
Like,
guy is here for a specific reason.
mm-hmm.
Jesus.
It. I agree that they definitely should have the data, and maybe they do. They haven't shown it, but maybe they have it, and that's why they've eliminated them as, uh,
Well,
you
I'm
know,
sure they eliminated them as suspects
I'm
before they
sure they
started
did.
using their
Yeah,
intel.
but of course that was he was like, well, don't you think? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything to do with that. Still not my job.
Yeah.
And yes, dude, no one is buying the Melanie Gibb is the criminal mastermind, assisted by her genius husband, David Warwick. Okay. No one's
I'm
buying that.
sorry, but yeah, no one is.
No one.
Also,
Not a
just
single
think
juror
for
in
a
the land.
half a second, what would be their motivation to have done these
Right.
things? They
And we
don't
heard
have
these,
any.
right. And we heard
Yeah,
these from
and
on the
they
stand.
are
Give me a
bumbling.
break.
Yeah,
They are. They have sweet spirits. That's what I'll say.
yes, they do. Absolutely.
So anyway, he asks him a couple more questions. He wants to know if we know the content of the text messages. Of course, we don't. He confirms there's a significant amount of communication between Chad and Lori. He asks Balance if he's aware that they were having an affair. Balance says yes, he is aware. And that's it. He has no further questions. But, right in the middle of that, when he starts asking about Alex's phone and where it was, binging, this is what happened.
Of that October 9th time. Can you tell me what Alex Cox's phone and where it was binging on October 9th between approximately 5:30 and 10:30 at night?
Did you say binging? I'm
Well,
sorry.
where it was locating, where it was showing location data.
Did you say binging?
I love that. Love it.
That was a really good one. That was just a really good one. So Wood redirects. He has a very brief redirect. They use 100 meters as a margin of error. He says their research really can be more precise than 100 meters or less. But 100 meters is a fair spot for a
Mhm.
margin of error for what the work that they do. He asks them about the components of GAR and how it is made up of components that anybody could purchase,
Yeah.
and that there are civilian companies that do drive testing, not just the government, and that a civilian could take his raw data and compare it and do their own testing. So yet
Mhm.
again, blasting that theory out of the water, which again, Pryor is just very uncomfy and red-faced. I just feel like this was just
Yeah,
not what he wanted to hear this morning.
he was unprepared, I think, for
Mhm.
what was being said.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I think he thought he knew some things that he was just wrong about,
Yeah, I think so.
and he's now worried that his witness is also wrong about.
Mhm.
He'll still put him up there, though, don't worry about it.
Oh, for sure.
So, that was pretty much it. Pryor wants to recross, but, they're actually going to be recalling Mr. or Agent Balance, and
Mhm.
he was like, "I don't really think that Wood went outside the scope, so I don't think you need a recross. You can recross him next time."
I love how Wood is slowing that down because my god, the
Mhm.
crossing and the recrossing and it's just endless.
Yeah. So that didn't happen. So then we go to a really long lunch.
Yeah.
Then we come back and Miss Hannah Parker takes the stand.
Yes,
Hannah
this was so
Parker,
good.
yes. Hannah is a cousin to Lori, or to Tammy. Good
Tammy.
God. Come slap me. This damn drink, Scott. Uh, yes, she is a cousin to Tammy. She said she was very sad by the news and very confused. Yeah.
Yeah.
She went to the funeral and the viewing, and she went through the viewing line twice. So the way the funeral would have been set up is that Tammy's casket would have been, typically they do these. This was at an LDS church, and typically they do use the Relief Society room, which is the women's organization, and the casket is in the very back of the room against the wall, and there's a lot of chairs lined up in there, and people walk in one door, and there's a whole line there of family members to receive you, like Chad and the kids essentially would have been standing there, and maybe some of
Mhm.
Tammy's family members, though I kind of doubt
With an
it.
open casket. The
Yeah, with an
casket's
open
open.
casket. Yeah. So you walk through, you say your I'm very sorry's and whatever, and you take a little gander at the casket if that's the thing you want to do, and then you keep on walking, and then you might sit in there and wait. In LDS funerals and with Tammy's, she was buried in temple clothes, and so she would have just in the viewing had on a white dress, and then when it's time to close the casket, people that aren't immediate family or close family will go into the chapel and wait, and people that are close family will stay in that room and they'll shut the doors, and then some of the people that were the closest to her that are endowed, meaning that they've been through the temple, they'll take a couple of minutes and dress her in her temple clothes, which is a few different items of clothing that go over the clothes she already has on. And then they seal the casket and they say a family prayer, and then they move the casket into the chapel and have the
And then
funeral
just close the
piece.
casket. Yeah.
But that's what an LDS funeral or an LDS viewing would look like. That's what would have happened. So
Mhm.
she went through the viewing line twice because she was with her parents. So she went through first with her dad. And Chad was the first person they spoke to. And Chad said that Tammy had been sick that day, that she'd been vomiting and coughing around 10 p.m. She threw up again. Again, this is the first time we've heard of multiple
Mm-hmm.
vomitings. And 10 p.m. Chad said that Tammy then went to bed, but he stayed in his office working. Around 1 a.m., he went upstairs and found Tammy on the floor and she'd rolled out of the bed. Chad said he found her cold. That's what Hannah said. While Hannah was testifying, Chad was sitting there with a really weird, creepy ass grin on his face.
Yeah, he was. It
Figure
was
that
weird.
out.
His facial expression was real odd. But I mean, 1 a.m. 1 a.m.?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't track at all with what he
No.
told paramedics and the police.
She thought it was weird because he was acting really calm. And the only time he really showed emotion is when her dad did. So if her
Mhm.
dad got emotional and cried, then Chad did too. And then when he stopped, he did too. And she just thought the whole
So he
thing
was
seemed
matching.
really weird and uncomfy.
Yeah.
So then 2 hours later, she went through the line again with her mother. And
Mhm.
Chad told them what happened. He said Tammy had been coughing violently and he was worried about her. And between 9 and 10, she came down to his office and said she was going to bed. Chad said he was worried about her and went to bed with her, but around midnight, she rolled out of bed. So Hannah just felt really weird about it and uncomfy about it
Yeah. This
because
time, midnight.
midnight. So, two different stories he told, and she just felt like it was weird and that he was acting weird and that the whole thing was weird. So then, of course, Pryor jumps up there looking like the cat who ate the canary for his cross, and he asks her if she's aware that Chad's home is only one story. And she says, "Well, I've never been there." And he said, "Well, there is no upstairs, so I just don't know." She's like, "Well, I don't know what to say. I haven't been there." And again, Chad is kind of leering. It's yucky. It's like they've got her. Uh,
Mhm.
Here's the problem with that, and this really pisses me off. That home is not one story. That's a
No.
lie. This is the back of the house. There's this add-on that's a garage. There is a bedroom in the dormer above it.
Mhm.
That little A-frame. This is a picture from realty.com from 2016 when they bought this house. So this is not their furniture, but this was being used as a bedroom at the time.
Mhm.
Now we have some confusion because some of us recall that back in Lori's trial, that some of the agents said that they went upstairs to Tammy's bedroom when they were
Yeah.
called. Some of you guys are saying that you recalled that they said that Tammy's bedroom was on the main floor of the house. So we're not entirely sure because we're kind of having a funny moment where we have some different memories. But we also know that Chad was sleeping up there because they had to go up there and get him the day the FBI came to search the house in January.
Yep.
We also know that when Emma and Chad were talking at his car the day that he was arrested and the kids were found, he talked to her about getting the mattress from upstairs.
He did. He said
So
upstairs.
that was a blatant lie on Pryor's part, a
Yeah, it was.
blatant lie. So the thing I really wish that she would have said to him in that moment.
The acreage that you're talking about, do you have any recollection of how much acreage we're talking around that surrounds Chad's house?
You own it. How many acres is it?
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know. Judge, could we have a sidebar? Yes.
I wish
I
she would have
know.
said, "Well, I don't know, you own it. How many stories is it, John?"
Yeah.
Yeah. She did not. She kind of got bullied, but that's okay. He blatantly
She
lied.
just said that's what Chad said. I've never been in that house, so I wouldn't know.
Yep. Now, one thought that I had was perhaps his office was down the hall and that he just meant she came down to his office down the hall from their bedroom. That would
Right.
be vernacular I would use. I The downstairs of my house is 2 steps, and I still call it downstairs, and my kids think it's
Mhm.
crazy, but it's downstairs to me, it's down the stairs.
Mhm.
Uh, But any way you slice it, whether that was their bedroom or it wasn't, he lied. He
Mm-hmm.
just lied to her. He lied in open court. Not that we don't expect that Pryor's going to be a liar, but wow,
Yeah.
that was something. The prosecution didn't push back on it, but I promise you they will.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Oh,
going
they
to have
will.
a witness soon that for whatever reason they're going to start asking them all about the layout of that house and if
Mm-hmm.
there is an upstairs. And the jury's going to find out, if they haven't already pieced it together, because they've heard some of this stuff already, that he was
Mm-hmm.
lying about that.
Yeah.
What a weird thing to lie about.
It was
But
a weird thing to lie about.
yeah, but okay then. Get on with your bad self there, Chad. I don't, or Pryor. I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah, it
So,
was bizarre.
and that was all he had for her.
Yeah.
So then we have Patricia Later. Patricia Later is also Tammy's cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Wixom was on direct. He asked if they had a strong relationship when they were younger, and she cried. She was
She
such a
did.
sweetheart.
She
They were,
was. It was
yeah,
sad.
they were 7 months apart in age and pretty much grew up like sisters. And they spent
Yeah.
weekends together. Tammy made her join band with her so that she would be in there with her, even though she
Mm-hmm.
didn't even play an instrument. Um, they had a lot of fun together in school. She said that Tammy would leave little notes for her in the classroom, and she still has one, which was really sweet.
Yeah.
So the day Tammy died, her mother called her, crying hysterically, and told Patricia that Tammy had died. And she said it made no sense. I just couldn't understand it. It made no sense. So, and again, she said it made no sense because Tammy was so young and so healthy and so
Right.
vibrant and so active. So she went to the viewing on Monday and then to the funeral the next day. And so, oh, so they had a night viewing. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, I should back that up a little bit. So they had two viewings, in other words.
Yeah, they did.
So there was a night viewing on Monday night at the church that would have just been people coming in to view the body and visit with the family. Then on Tuesday morning before the funeral, there would have been a second viewing, and that's when they
Mm-hmm.
would do the whole ceremonial clothing and close the casket and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
sorry, need to clear that up just in case. Uh, anyway, so when she and her daughter went through the line, so she's Hannah's mom, by the way, who we just heard from.
Mm-hmm.
She again said Tammy said she wasn't feeling well. She was coughing a lot. He said he asked if she was okay and she threw up. She said she was going to bed. He asked her if she was okay and she said yes. She was feeling better after she threw up and she went to bed. And then he told Patricia, Tammy loved you so much. Oh, go fuck yourself, Chad.
Yeah.
Then he told her that Tammy went to bed around 10. He stayed up working. And then he went to bed later and woke up the next morning to the sound of Tammy falling out of bed. Dude.
That's 3 different stories.
Mhm. Also, dead people don't fall off the bed.
No. That's not a thing.
So she went to the funeral and she was pretty unimpressed with what he had to say. This made me want to choke this motherfucker. He
Yeah.
stood up in his murdered wife's funeral and he said that Tammy was difficult to live with. She was lazy and she was depressed.
You
Can
ignorant
you even?
bastard.
Yep. Can you
Mm.
even with that? Oh my God. I was infuriated when I heard that.
How did his kids just sit there and take that? I mean,
Yeah. She said she did have depression, but to just call that out in front of the whole congregation was embarrassing for her. She said she was so
and to call her
happy about it.
lazy and difficult?
Yeah.
I'll tell you who's lazy and difficult, and it's not Tammy.
Yeah. She said Emma told a story about Tammy wanting more pets
Yeah.
and that she'd kind of just get a new pet and sneak it in the house, and that was that. Well, you are a grown adult and the person who has the job in the house. Tammy, you
Yeah.
should be able to have whatever pet you want. Garth told a story about Tammy playing video games but she'd be on the lookout for when Chad would get home so she didn't get in trouble. In trouble.
In trouble.
Patricia said Tammy frequently felt like she had to hide what she was doing so she wouldn't get in trouble with Chad. Yeah.
What the hell?
Mm-hmm. Yep. She said that when they were both living in Springville from 1995 to 2015, they would visit with each other at least once a month. She said that they'd chat about their kids and life and whatnot, and she usually would swing in to visit for a little bit and end up staying a few hours. But she said when Chad got home, things always got uncomfortable and she felt like she needed to leave. And
Yep.
I felt like when she said that, every one of us, jury included, started thinking about a time or a place or a home
Mm-hmm.
where you knew when certain people were home, it was time to go. You
Yeah.
know, we've
Yeah.
all been there. We've all been to that house.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Heather Daybell said it. Tammy was a battered woman. Absolutely, Shannon. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. She
Yep.
was.
That's pretty much it. And then Pryor comes up on Cross. And I'm like, dude, if you start talking about Tammy being lazy, I swear to God, this place is going to erupt.
Yeah.
He asked Patricia if it would surprise her to learn that if you're so close to Tammy, would it surprise you to learn that you had no contact with her in the last year of her life? Patricia's like, yeah, I did. And he's like, no, there's no records of you having any contact with her. And she's like, yeah, we talked on Facebook all the time. I talked to her on Messenger. She's like, that's not correct.
But what the hell does Pryor know about the difference between a text message, an email, and an instant message? Nothing. That's what. He can't even tell them apart.
No.
He
Pryor
again looked like such an idiot.
looked like a fool. And she's like, we messaged on Messenger all the time. I'll bet you $20 she ran straight home and opened up her Messenger. I don't know if they've deleted Tammy's Facebook page. Maybe they have. But to look, because she said we talked on Facebook all the time. He
Yeah.
just didn't see any texts between them, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
He asked her if she recalls any discussion at the viewing about Tammy or Chad going upstairs or downstairs in the house. She said she doesn't recall. And that's all he's got.
Yep.
When she left the stand, people in the courtroom said that she gave Chad a good hard stare as she walked past him, but he kept his head down in his laptop.
Good for her.
She'd like to choke his neck.
Jackass.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then they sidebar, and it cracks me up because I said to my husband, court's over for the day. And he goes, really? And I said, yeah, they're sidebarring right now. And the prosecutor's saying, we don't have any more witnesses because we don't have any court tomorrow. And we thought this would all take longer, and we don't have anyone else left. About 5 minutes later, they came out and said exactly that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
partly because I'm sure they thought that the cross would last longer. It's all the planning of these trials it's a huge freaking deal, and anticipating how long things might take. I mean, my
Mhm.
God, look what he pulled with Kaya Kamanu last Thursday.
Oh my God.
He had him on the stand the entire day in Cross. So I'm sure they thought that Pryor was going to have a whole lot more to say than he did.
Yeah.
And it ended up ending court 2 hours early.
Well, and I think they also didn't want to have somebody on the stand that was going to carry over from the end of Monday clear to
Yeah.
the beginning of Wednesday.
Yep.
Because with that funeral tomorrow for the officer that was killed in Ada County, they're all off.
Yep. Yep. So, yeah. So, of course, no court tomorrow, but there should be court the whole rest of the week. They said they have a very
Mhm.
full schedule for the rest of the week. Yeah.
I'll bet they do.
Yep. So, that's pretty much what happened today. So, per normal, all the girls coming up big for Tammy, except for, her own girls.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Right. Right. Tammy said Pryor did not have any data between Tammy and her cousin. Again, he was lying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lying
Just
or dumb as
making shit up.
hell. Yeah.
Doesn't know that, there are lots more ways to communicate than just by phone call or text message.
Would it surprise you to know that you never spoke to her for the whole last year of her life? Why would you say it like that, dude?
Yeah.
Really? And really, you're going to pull the whole, you don't get to grieve Cammy. You weren't that close to Tammy. So,
Yeah.
really? Are you kidding? This lady's sitting here sobbing, talking about her
Yeah.
childhood experience, how much she loved Tammy, how worried she'd been about Tammy, obviously. And you're going to try and pull this whole you didn't really know Tammy deal? Oh, dude.
Yeah.
No.
Don't even.
Jess said, do you think they're moving too slow, too fast, or right on time with the trial so far? I'm guessing they're right on time
I
because
think
they've
so
had
too.
some delays and some, bloviation with prior, but then at the same time, they've had other things that have gone obviously way faster than they thought. So I'm guessing they
Well,
think they're right on target.
I think so. And with Lori's case, they actually had quite a few more witnesses planned than they actually put on the stand.
Yeah.
They got
Yeah.
to a point where they felt like, okay, we've done it. We've proven our case. We don't have to
Yep.
keep going.
Hmm.
And so who knows
Absolutely.
how far this will go.
Hmm.
Oh,
But it's a good
sorry.
point, you guys, and me too. I have lots of cousins that I don't talk to very often that I would still be floored. I'd still be gutted if something
Right.
happened to them. It's
Right.
such a dumb
Exactly.
argument. Again, it made
It
him look like
is.
a jackass in front of the jury,
It's the argument of someone who doesn't have any family.
right? Yeah.
The argument of someone who doesn't have cousins and
Mhm.
family that although you don't see each other regularly, you still care about each other and would be devastated if something happened to them.
Yep. And remember that Tammy didn't choose to move to Rexburg.
Yeah.
Tammy didn't want to move to Rexburg. That was Chad. Tammy was devastated to leave all of her family behind in Springville. Chad's the one that wanted that. And that's what took her
Right.
away from all of these people that loved her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Teresa said they've had 30 witnesses before today, 59 in Lori's, so they could be halfway, but they may need different witnesses like the funeral guy. Right. We're
Hmm.
seeing a little bit different people, but great point. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure the jury's like, let's keep moving. With you,
Right.
Sue, on that. I'm sure they're like, come on, we're here. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Can
Yeah.
we please stop talking about paintball guns and keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Kat says, how has Friday's news that Tammy and kids accepted the light dark rating system reaction to the Sunday school kids' name being shared so publicly? Do you think folks still want them teaching? Yeah. Good question.
I know. There's
I
got to
would
be some
want my
rumblings
kids in those
around.
classes. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was that's a little scary
Mhm. Mhm.
that they were participating in that. But did they know that their dad was going to take it to this extreme? Probably not.
Mhm. Yep. Well, no. I
You
am
know
sure
how
they
many
never thought he'd actually be killing people,
right.
but I'm with you guys though. If one of my kids' names got called out in open court like that because Chad was deeming them dark, I would be pretty hot under the collar. However, you
Oh
do have
yeah.
to remember that was 4-ish years ago, maybe 5. Those kids are on the cusp of not being minors anymore, or maybe aren't
Yep.
minors anymore. I don't know.
Hmm.
They were 12, so maybe 16 now. So maybe they are. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know exactly when those texts were sent, so I wasn't sure. But still, I would be pissed if that was one of my kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
And
The jury is getting very irritated. Yep.
yeah. And we don't know how many prior intents to call. Going to be fewer though,
Hmm.
but we don't know for sure
Yeah.
how many. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. I keep yawning. I am very tired.
You pay to play, man. You pay to
Well,
play.
and I think GSI, I think you have a point, and I think we have to think about this from a domestic violence standpoint.
Hmm.
So GSI says, I wonder if the kids hated their mom too. Something is very wrong and off.
Hmm.
In abusive situations, often the abuser turns the children against the abused parent. This is
Yeah.
not unusual at all. So those kids may really have just identified with dad all the way along and been manipulated into thinking that mom was the problem all the time.
Hmm.
And that's why we're not seeing any active support of mom.
Hmm.
That is a very, common scenario in domestic violence.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Unfortunately, way too common.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, the storm didn't come up. It did. I mean, they all read the story. So they heard about Chad's storm. They read about Chad's storm, but they didn't have to hear it
They
in open
did.
court the way they did in Lori's. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Deanna said she's irritated and she can leave whenever she wants.
Right?
Yep.
Oh,
So all 5 though? Well, I don't really think so. GSI. I don't. I don't think
I
all of
don't
those
either.
kids are on board. I don't. Some of them have been very, very quiet, and I think that they're not on board, but I think they just don't know what to do, what to think. I think
And
that they are at the point right now that Tammy's family said that they are just totally alienated from those kids now. And I have a couple of theories about that. I wonder if there's 2 of the kids in my mind probably do have some contact with Tammy's family, but it's on the DL. Because
mm-hmm.
if Emma had any idea, she would be hot. I think
Yeah.
Emma is driving the bus now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these kids are trying to hold on to whatever family they have left because they've lost a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And so I suspect that there's a couple of them that are quietly just trying to put their lives back together, need this trial to be over, and aren't really saying much of anything to anybody about it. We won't see them. I don't think we'll see all the kids on the stand at all. And I still
No.
think that some of them probably are having quiet contact with some of the family, but I don't think they want Emma to know. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. But that I have no proof of
I
that
would.
whatsoever. That is just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense
Yeah,
though.
that's what I think. Do you think the kids' justification for the cheating with Lori is because Chad is saying God wants this? Yeah, to some degree.
Well, they seemed, or Emma at least seemed convinced that it was only an emotional affair
Hmm.
and that it was not a physical affair. And that she had kind of justified that in her own mind.
There
I
was
don't know.
also a text message, and I tried to find it and couldn't find it. If any of you guys have it, send it to me. It was a text message that I was either Seth or Garth. It was a Facebook communication between him and a friend who said, "Hey, dude, I heard that your mom died and your dad just remarried. Like, what's going on? Are you okay?" Kind of a text.
Oh,
And
I
he
remember that. Yeah.
said, "My dad's not a bad guy, but sometimes he just makes decisions that are hard to understand," or something along those lines.
Ah,
And I always think about that in that
interesting.
aspect. Like, my dad's not a bad guy, he just does bad things.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, none of the kids have not attended any of this trial or Lori's.
Nope. Nope. And they also could watch because their mother was murdered. They are considered victims, so they could watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we know. I know it's weird, Pamela, to me too. She said the way Emma sounds like she was likely in on it. She was so close to her mother, but it sure doesn't sound like it. I know.
Right.
It's really weird to keep hearing this. But Emma and her mother were so close. They were, what did they say, thick and tight.
Yeah, that
And
was weird. Weird way to
uh
say it.
mhm. And yet in Tammy's death, Emma has done nothing but defend her father.
Yeah.
And honestly, I have gone along the lines mostly of I don't know what I would do. It's hard to judge somebody who's gone through something like this, but the more evidence we see makes me
Yeah. It's
feel less and less gracious towards her. Yeah.
yeah.
I would imagine they are watching it on TV, Joelle. I would think so too. Yeah. I think that's true, Sue, that Garth told a friend a different story of Tammy's death. And that's a good point. I don't think we're done hearing from people that are going to tell us either that they heard a different story about Tammy's death or that they heard a different story from Lori and Chad about how many kids Lori had.
Yes.
There's
That all
still some of
changed
that.
so many times.
Yep, there's still some of that. I wonder if Chad's parents are going to be on the stand. Because they were some of the ones that
Mhm.
were told lies about how many kids Lori had. So, yeah.
Yeah. I know. It's all very possible.
Jay Galaxy says, give Pryor some credit and respect. He has to present a competent defense against these really bad facts and a vile client. I'm impressed he can do this alone. I mean, he's at least trying for sure. He's at least
He
trying.
is.
And I'm glad for it, and I'll give you that for sure, because a lot of you guys have asked us, do you think that Chad's going to be able to come back on appeals and say that he had inadequate counsel? And we don't think that he will at
No.
all. He might try
No.
that. We don't think he will be able to, because he chose this attorney. And because when Pryor tried to quit because he wasn't getting paid anymore, and the judge said, no, you're staying, he asked Chad point blank, do you want to retain him as your attorney? And he said, yes, I do.
Yeah.
He chose this shit. And so I don't think, and Pryor has had 4 years to prepare. They also
Yes.
had an opportunity to hire other counsel and did not do it. And now Pryor
Right.
is putting up a very robust defense. So I'm
Mhm.
glad he's doing it. I'm with you on that. I'm glad he's doing it because I almost joked and said, John, is that you? But I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
But I am glad, and I'm with you on that, because we want a robust defense for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. We want this conviction to stick, just like we want the Lori's conviction to stick. And
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And how do you defend when all of the dead bodies were on your property?
Right.
If
Right.
that was the only piece of evidence you had, that's a lot to defend. And then
Yeah.
add all of the other stuff. Boy, you're going to have a tough time with that. Yeah.
Yep.
But we're still going to laugh about him and at him a lot every day
100%.
because,
Yes.
well, he keeps, dare I say, opening the door for it.
Yes. He
But
does.
at any rate, that's what
Bing!
I've
Opens the
got. Do you
door.
guys have any other questions or comments? Anything we didn't cover today that we should have?
I can't think of anything else. I
I
think
think
that
we
was pretty
pretty
much
much
it.
got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so tomorrow, yeah, I never reported the kids missing, Cheryl. Great point. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He did all the things wrong and then lied to so many people about so many things.
Yep.
Genius criminals, they were not
Nope.
at all.
Not at all.
You know, way back when people thought the kids were buried somewhere in Yellowstone. And that scared the shit out of us. We had talked a lot about
Mhm.
how if those kids are buried in Yellowstone, they might not ever be found because of predation. All the
Mhm.
grizzlies up there, my God. And also just because of the vastness of Yellowstone and on into like Grand Teton National Park and that whole area. Oh my God.
Mhm.
And we know that because we have friends that run cadaver dogs, we know that they had been searching Yellowstone as soon as they could possibly get in there the spring of 2020. They'd been searching
Mhm.
Yellowstone with dogs for a couple of months in any of the
Yeah.
places that they could get into, because that was still a viable question. Were the kids disposed of in Yellowstone?
Oh, yeah. That's
And
a horrifying thought.
had they disposed of the kids in Yellowstone, we might not be here right now.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. GSI says, I just want to know that Chad was home, but he may say, even if Alex buried them on my property, I have a huge property I didn't see.
It's no huge property, man. And they
Mhm,
can, the prosecution can definitely refute that with all of the photography and video and stuff they have. It is not a
mhm.
huge property at all.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a good question though. Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
No, I
Yeah.
don't either.
Yep. So, right? Yeah. Potato Bodega said that story y'all told us about the person who jumped in the hot spring was terrifying. Yeah. There are hot springs in Yellowstone that are so acidic that if you were to fall or just jump into one of them, your body would literally dissolve into nothing.
About the only
Nothing.
thing that survives are your shoes.
Hmm.
Yep.
If that. There was a person that jumped in last year, 2 years ago, and they finally identified them. There was a little bit of their foot left in one shoe, and that's all they were
Yeah.
able to recover. And they actually finally did get a DNA hit and figured out who they were and determined it was a suicide, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. But speaking of Yellowstone, just for fun, we've had our
Oh,
first tour-on incident of the year.
of course we have. And it's a local. It's someone from here in Idaho Falls who did it. What a
It's
dumbass.
a local. These dumbass people were up in Yellowstone over the weekend, and the rangers got a call that somebody was harassing the buffaloes and got there just in time to see this jackass kicking a buffalo. And he must have gotten kicked back because they said he had uh, fairly minor injuries.
Yeah.
What?
You kick a bison's gonna kick you, and then that's not good.
What in the?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. And usually it's people that aren't from here, but not this dude. So anyway,
No.
there you go. Some dummy getting drunk and running out and kicking buffalo. I hope he kicked back pretty hard. He had that coming.
I imagine so. Yeah.
So tomorrow we're off. So two things are going to happen. First of all, we're going to put up 2 Patreons. It's the
Mhm.
last of the month and it's Patreon time. If you are interested in our Patreon, you can either go to Patreon or to True Crime Squad. If you go straight to Patreon, just search for True Crime Squad. If you just go to
Mhm.
our website, truecrimesquad.com, you can just find it there and join it. Uh, there's a few different levels of interaction there. But on our Patreon, we do 2 episodes a month that nobody else gets. So this time I
Mhm.
am talking about a ghost hunter uh, vampire fiasco that happened in Italy. And
It is wild.
Kristi, I don't know if you know what your story is yet, but
I do not.
yeah,
I don't even know how to even compete with your story because it is wild.
something. This is
But
like
yes,
something
I
out of
will
a
be
Dan Brown
doing
book.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Uh, and we're going to do Patreon a little bit different for the next 2 months. Uh, we're going to do separate stories to give us both
Mhm.
a little bit of a break. So you'll have one from me and one from Kristi. So those will be up by the end of
Normally we do them
tomorrow.
together, but yeah.
Yeah, normally we do. Yeah. But that's how you can do Patreon. If you would like to tip us, you can go to truecrimesquad.com. There's multiple ways there to tip us. There is a link there for our Etsy store for our merch
Mhm.
and shipped a gorgeous hoodie out today. True Crime Squad hoodie. Gorgeous.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So those are ways to interact with us. Also, our super chat's always on if you want to buy a sticker. Always appreciated, never required. But as you can imagine, this trial is an insane amount of work for us and you guys. I know.
Taking over our lives, yes,
Yeah. Oh, we do appreciate the support very much. But thanks
definitely.
you guys so much for being here. So yes, tomorrow's a day off. So self-care, all of you,
Mhm.
everybody. Watch something fun. If you're watching the Care and Read trial, be prepared to break things you'll probably want to. Looks like they
If you have
really
us
got
on
off.
Patreon, we've put up some really funny episodes recently, so go look for
Yeah,
those.
go watch those. Those are great. Uh, real quick in Patreon, we did a story a couple of months ago, Kristi did, about all these different instances of men wiping their wieners all over everything in stores and stuff.
Or
And
putting stuff up their butt in a
yeah.
store. So yeah,
hmm
it's
But
gross
anyway,
but funny.
the same place, the same town in Texas where that guy was putting stuff up his butt in the antique stores and then putting it back,
Mhm.
now have an instance of a man in a restaurant putting his parts on the food.
Oh God.
You should probably listen to
Is
it because you need to know where not to eat
yeah, you probably if you live
anywhere
in
ever
Texas, you want to
again.
find out about this. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that was just an aside. So
Mhm.
thanks for being here. Keep your winners to yourselves. Everything's going to be fine. Have a good night. This has been yet another production of the True Crime Squad.
Bye everybody.